Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's session. Thank you for showing up. I know it's late in the day, third day over here at MIX. Hope you guys are having a great time, and hope you've had a wonderful set of sessions so far, and hope you had a great time at the Tao party last night. I heard it was really nice, but I got in too late for that. But I'm sure I'm going to hear some nice stories about it when I get back to Redmond. So. Just before we start, a couple of things here. We're a small audience. Feel free to just pop up your hand, ask questions as we go along. Quick show of hands. How many people in the audience here are either responsible for website development or design, or in any way contributing to the building of those sites? Here, excellent. And how about the folks in the room that are more on the business side? Looking more at the marketing, or looking at how to drive revenue or monetization. Excellent. That's a great balance. It actually turns out to be 50-50, and I think we have a little bit of something for both of those groups. So let's just get started. Over the last few years, actually, the online advertising space has seen a tremendous boom, and I'm sure all of you are aware. You've seen online advertising evolve. There's been tremendous growth both in the area of the kinds of advertising that you're seeing. So this is display, rich media, contextual, ads are appearing in mobile devices, SMS, RSS feeds, all over the place. And then also in the kind of targeting you're seeing. So it used to be that they just stuck up ads on the website and then hope you cared. And we've gotten a lot more sophisticated in terms of contextual targeting, behavioral targeting, demographic, geographic, psychographic, you name it, and there's a targeting behind it. Now with that growth in the advertising space, we've also noticed that there's been a huge surge in activity around tools and services that are available to advertisers. So this is just programmatic interfaces, APIs, so that software developers can create these tools to upload campaigns, download reports, do the data munging, doing a lot of data dicing and slicing, and then being able to optimize their creative, all as a part of a single package. And that's been a fantastic growth. But one of the things that we've noticed is in the publisher space, that there's an opportunity to provide more information to publishers, more control to publishers, and then be able to provide creative new ways of being able to monetize existing assets as well as new assets that are coming online. So my name is Rishi Bal, and I'm a program manager with Microsoft's online advertising team. And I'm going to be talking to you about predominantly three things today. So we're looking at so Ad Manager is a ad serving solution in a box, and we're going to talk about the level of control and monetization that it can provide different audiences. We're going to spend some time on an exciting product and offering from the Massive division. So this is online advertising within games, and we have a couple of demos there for you. But we're going to kick this discussion off with the Keyword Services Platform. Now, to avoid saying Keyword Services Platform over and over again, I'm just going to call it KSP. So what the KSP platform is a result of actually a research project out at Microsoft where some of the applied research teams were doing a lot of data munging. So they were looking at what users are searching for on our website, what users are looking for, and how that's changing. And they came up with some great insights that ultimately got transformed into the piece of software that we're going to look at. So for the developers in the room, KSP can be thought of as really three layers. So there's the provider layer, and that's where all the research algorithms, data mining sits on top of the raw data. There's the API layer, where we're able to provide you different interfaces into those providers. And then there's the applications that are being built on top of that. I'm going to switch. Let me see if that works. All right. So I'm gonna do a couple of quick demos here to demonstrate our Keyword Services platform. Some of you might have seen small pieces of this in demos earlier. I think Ray Ozzy's keynote touched on this a little bit. And so we'll get into this in a little bit more detail as a part of this session. All right, that's a good start with any live demo. Always have a hold my breath while that pops up. So what we're looking at here is that actually visible in the back, or is this too small? Okay, let me zoom this in a little bit, and let's see if that makes up for the lack of clarity. That better? Okay, great. So what you're looking at up on the screen here is a set of service providers. So these are a set of algorithms that we've built that have specific functionality. Let's just take a look at a couple of them. So for example, we have a demographic service provider where you can give it a keyword and it'll give you details back in terms of the demographics of people that are searching for that term in particular. And then you can see as part of the contract, you can pass in optional parameters. Let me just kind of extend this so that you can see this better. So you can look at how things change over time. You're able to take this data and you're able to chart it if necessary. And what we've done is we've gone and built these service providers in the back end. Now, one way to use this would be directly via this web services API, and I'll just run a quick. Let me just run a quick query on one of these algorithms. Query. Oh, great. It's even populated that with a term for me. I'm going to run that. Great. And what this has given me back is a bunch of data in terms of what advertisers are willing to pay for the term digital camera. So this is, how many clicks do advertisers get? How much are advertisers willing to pay on average? Now, mind you, this is a beta program, so some of the data that you're looking at will be in the range, but it's not exactly what you'll expect, what you can expect, especially as you cross ad providers. So while we could go through the web interface here, let me switch to an application that we've built on top of the web interface, and that's going to let me do a few interesting things here. So let's say I'm a developer that's working with the tech.msn.com site, and we're seeing that we're able to keep up some steady traffic. We're getting great traffic. We've got great content, and we are running a contextual advertising product on our website. And for some reason, I'm noticing that, or the business teams are noticing, and they're asking questions about why our CPCs are dropping, or why we're making less money from the website. I can use this tool in a number of different ways to both understand how the changes that I'm making on my content are affecting both the advertisements that are showing up, as well as how they're affecting the users and whether the content is matching the users that are actually coming to my site. So let's just take the tech.msn.com example. Here's what the website looks like. And I have a couple of other examples in terms of the content here. Shortcuts on the top. So how to buy a cell phone, things like that. So let's do a quick run on using our tool to see what does an ad engine look for when it hits these pages. So I'm going to call a service we have called the keyword extraction service. And what it's going to do is hopefully, yes, it works. In real time, it's going to reach out. What the server's done is it's crawled that website, and it's extracted the keywords that are interesting from an advertising perspective. So this is not just any content, but keywords that are monetizable. And you can see, as expected, that we've got cell phones, digital cameras, MP3 players, the typical kind of content that you'd expect to see on a tech site. And I can go and do this for specific URLs. So I pulled up this article up here. Let's see if we can.
What are the latency that you would expect for the crawl and then
That's a great point. So the latency depends on a couple of different things. One thing is, if we've already pre-crawled these results, then you can expect those results to be cached. If not, then it will depend on the website itself. It'll depend on the load on our services before you can get that response back.
So subsequent impressions will serve better than the first impression.
Right. So the question was, will the subsequent impressions be served up faster? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So we're going to run that run that query on this specific page. And as you would expect, since this page is about how to buy cell phones, you can actually see the keyword cell phones looks like it's the most relevant to this page. And as you go down this page, you're going to look at keywords, and they're going to have a lower confidence score. So what the algorithm is telling you is, well, the keyword tech is kind of associated with how to buy cell phones, but at a much lower level of confidence. Now, as a website owner, as a developer, how do I use this data that I'm getting back here? Well, it turns out that I can use this to make some very key decisions in terms of how the company that I work for or customers could be building their website. So let's say we're looking at adding some blogs about cell phones, digital cameras, and MP3 players. So I'm going to copy this to a new sheet and do some additional research in terms of let me just zoom in a little bit. In terms of what these keywords are actually worth to my advertisers. So what is the monetization value for these particular subjects? So notice I have a service for monetization, and what this is going to do is it's going to query our database and look at the range of dollar amounts that advertisers are willing to pay for clicks on these particular terms. Now again, I want to caution everybody in the audience, this is beta data. And while you can use this for kind of a relative comparison between different topics, I wouldn't always expect to see these dollar amounts when you get clicks. Now I'm just going to pull the data for a couple of different things. Let me highlight for you what we're looking at here. So for the keyword cell phones, advertisers are willing to pay somewhere between $1.50 and about $3 for the keyword cell phones. I can also do the same thing with digital cameras between 70 and 90 cents. Now this one actually was a surprise for me when I pulled it up, because I was thinking digital cameras probably cost a little bit more. So here's something that I may not have known as a typical publisher in terms of the monetization value and what advertisers are willing to pay. Yes?
Does this look based on actuals that already ran the values of these keywords in the past?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Are those dollar values, are they based on actuals that have already ran on the site in the past? Does it look at historical data to give you those values?
So the question is are we looking at historical data to give you these values? And the answer is absolutely. So we are looking at a sample of historical data to provide these values to you. So they are based on real market data. I'm going to just do a quick repeat on that with MP3 players, since I'm trying to make a decision here about what area I can actually invest in more and what kind of content I can pull in. Now there's some very interesting angles to this. There's the editorial aspect, but there's also a lot of web publishers out there that are bringing in content from third parties. So what they've done is they've struck up publishing agreements, and they can pull out using RSS feeds or other data pull mechanisms. They can pull data in from third-party data providers, basically licensing data. And this might help in the selection of what kind of data is actually useful to be licensed. So as it turns out, looking at the data here, 70 to 90 cents, still under $1. Cell phones looks like it's still a winner. So maybe now I want to do some additional research in terms of understanding what kind of cell phone is actually interesting, and which cell phones are users trying to read about. So let's try and do some research on a couple of different cell phones. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this, but I know my sister has from my niece. The Firefly phone is a phone that's geared towards kids. It used to be quite the hot item. And let's go ahead and do some research on this. Again, querying the server, pulling data. This is real data that we're pulling. 20 cents to 40 cents, substantially lower than what we were expecting based on our earlier search for cell phones. So here's an opportunity for me to do some additional research on this term. So Firefly phone. Let me see why that's the case. Now the interesting thing here is that now we're going to shift from looking at the advertiser perspective to looking at the user perspective. So how much do users care about this particular term? Well, let me zoom this in a bit. Well, it turns out that back in June, July, this keyword was hot. And, well, right now, not so much. Now, this might have something to do with the seasonal effect, where it's back to school time, and kids are looking for that cool new hip phone, and not so much later. Although if it was still in demand, I would expect to see another spike at the Christmas shopping season. So here's some more data that's telling me that if I were considering writing about the Firefly phone or pulling in data as a publisher, users may not be as interested in that anymore. Now, there is another phone. This one I like because I just purchased it. Let's see if we can pull some data about it. Aha. So here's something that's a little bit more interesting. The Blackjack 2 phone, this is a phone from Samsung. As it turns out, there's a new model that was recently released, and what you're basically seeing is that just about the time that you saw the announcements around the Blackjack 2 go out, traffic and interest spiked. And then it's been relatively steady since then. So this is how you could use a tool like this, either programmatically or via an Excel spreadsheet, to actually validate some of the ideas that you have in terms of pulling content programmatically or designing your site for a particular audience. Oops. So there's another thing that's particularly interesting about the Firefly phone that I recall, again, kind of jumped out at me when I was doing research on this. Let's see if we can get the demographic attributes for this. You'll notice here, overwhelmingly female and overwhelmingly in the 35 to 50 age range. So although this phone is targeted towards adolescents or kids, the people that are actually searching for it and doing research are probably the decision makers. So this is another interesting piece of insight. So here you have a phone that's targeted towards kids, and as a publisher, you may not have been aware that your audience in the 35 to 50-year-old bracket is actually really interested in that phone because they're going to go and buy this phone for their kids.
But this can get skewed by people who are not necessarily given information either through cookie or logged into a server, right?
I'm sorry?
How do you reduce the demographic?
So the question is, how do you deduce the demographic? So MSN as a publisher has access to a large amount of different kinds of anonymized data. So the demographics are one of them. There's also been some very cool work done by different teams in terms of demographic prediction, where based on user behavior, you're able to project what the approximate demographic for that user might be. Now, I'm not going to go through everything that we have here, but so we've touched on a few different things. There's a few others that I think would be interesting. Search buzz is an interesting one. So this is looking at what are the things that tend to be spiky. So spiky is, there's a lot of interest. There's a spurt of user interest, and then it goes away suddenly. So let's take a look here. Books and literature. Give it a shot. Let's see what we get back. Some interesting stuff. Some of these you'll notice are strongly related to books, and others less so. But there's at least a few surprises in here, in my opinion. I'm not going to say which ones, but here's another tool that publishers could be using to deduce something about their customers and trying to understand what they could do to better serve this customer base. Another interesting one we have under the search buzz is the top frequent keywords. So what is it that people usually search for under certain topics? So let's say celebrities. Well, no surprises here. And as we go down this list, there's a few names that I don't know, but I guess I've not been keeping up with the news as much as I'd like. But again, this is another tool you could be using to understand your audience a little bit better.
Can I set parameters, like I would like to have a certain time frame for this data to display, or I would like a certain geography? In my case, for example, I would like to see the
Sure. So the question is, could we specify certain parameters on top of these queries, like date ranges or geographic parameters around it? So definitely, there's a few things that we do support. And let me pull Britney Spears, since that's the first name. So let's look at the demographics. And so I am able to specify a date range. So I can look for this in the last 30 days, 7 days, 10 days. And the other thing that I can pull up is the geographic information. So what is the relative share? So here's your demographic information. And the other thing I can do is pull up the geographic information to say, what is the relative interest in, say, US versus Canada versus other parts of the world? So here we are. High degree of interest in the United States and Canada. And then you can actually see how that behavior tapers down from there. I guess it's pulled up the top 10 for me. I think the specific example as used as a part of the question was Germany.
Well, it's the other way around. I want to see, I may want to see what the world looks like, but I also may have a predefined set of what I'm just interested in. I'm not interested in the US or what the top keywords are for the US, but I have a very specific view on, for example, my geographic location. Could be Europe, for example.
Sure. So the question in the front is that I might have a predefined view of the world, and how do I narrow down that data for that view of the world? And that's actually a great point of feedback that I'm going to take and say, hey, how are we doing this? And should we be adding another parameter in here that specifies the country? So I don't believe we do that for the majority of our algorithms today, but point taken. All right, so that was our that was a demo of the things that we could do with the Keyword Services platform. I'm going to go out on a limb, since I think we have enough time, and ask if there's a particular website that you'd like to run through the tool. If any of you have a website, you're running contextual advertisements, or a favorite website, we could give it a shot. Any suggestions? Any favorite websites?
Check out Daring Fireball.
I'm sorry?
Daring Fireball.
All right, let me see if I can spell that right.
T-A-R-I-N-G Fireball. F-I-R-E-B-A-L-L. It's pretty simple. I think they have contextual ads on.
Highly not recommended, by the way, to ask your audience for URLs while doing a demo. Daringfireball.net. All right. Is there any particular section you want to go to, or do we want to just look at the homepage?
Yeah, this is pretty much it.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's take a pass at it. Let's see what our keyword extraction engine pulls up, and then we can look at some of the terms and look at what their monetization levels would be. Aha, iPhone. That's a good one. Apple iPhone, apps, cool games. All right, so I'm just going to pick a few over here. iPhone is overwhelmingly the keyword with the highest level of confidence, but let's take that. So iPhone software downloads, cool games. How about that? Here we are. You can see how that compares with the Firefly phone, also in the same range but slightly higher. I think there was cool apps. I don't know if there's going to be enough. Aha, we had to see that as a part of the demo. No demo is finished until we see one of those. I believe that the application or the KSP platform probably didn't have enough data on that. Let me pick another one. Software downloads, maybe. There you go. So it turns out software downloads is actually a more interesting subject for advertisers. You can also do things like look at the demographics for people looking for an iPhone. Well-balanced, male, female, and then a high number of users in the 25 to 50 bracket. So as a site owner, I might find that handy in terms of matching my content to my audience and saying, am I pulling the right content? Am I blogging about the right things that my users really care about?
In addition, does it also give you the effective CPM for the site?
I'm sorry?
Does it also give the effective CPM for the site?
So that was a great question. The question was, does it also give you the effective CPM for the site? So the CPM is basically how much money I would make per thousand, every 1,000 times that I showed an ad. The CPM or the eCPM or the RPM varies significantly for publishers depending on a number of factors. So it depends on the nature of your audience. It depends on the nature of your placement. So where in the page you've put it. Is it above the fold? Is it below the fold? It's going to vary in terms of what ad format you've selected. So the variance is fairly high. So I think given some additional parameters, it might be possible to do that, but not with the data that we have right now.
It also depends on the number of advertisers, right? Number of ads and advertisers that you
So the question is, it also depends on the number of advertisers and ads. Yes, and the answer is absolutely it does. Now that's actually data that we have access to. There's going to be additional data. So you could take an ad, a particular ad and put it at the top of the page versus the bottom of the page, and you're going to see a different effective CPM for those two ads. So you might get a range out of it, but the predictability goes down significantly. Okay, let me just switch back here. All right, so we talked about the Keyword Services platform and the kind of things you could do within it. Look to us to kind of expand this beta program. I think the feedback that we're getting here is great. The next question is, where do I get it? Well, if you hit this URL, advertiser/advertiser/adcenter_add-in, it'll provide you all the information you need to be able to access and download this little app that we were playing with. There's a couple of prerequisites for this. You do need an Ad Center account, and I think there's a $5 one-time charge when you sign up with Ad Center. You do need Excel 2007, and on that same page you'll find a link to download a 90-day trial version of Excel, and after that I think you're pretty much good to go. We do have, so that's how you can access the Excel plugin. Now if you wanted programmatic access to the .NET library, you can email adplate@microsoft.com, and these folks will be able to coordinate those requests. Did everybody get a chance to write that down? All right. All right, moving on from the Keyword Services platform, we talked about three things when I started off today, which is how do we get more information, how do we get more control, and how do we create more ad monetization opportunities for publishers. So Ad Manager goes to address that second issue around control. So if you're a medium to large sized publisher and you're publishing in the millions of pages every day, a lot of times what you're going to find is that advertisers are going to approach you directly. Advertisers are going to come and say, hey, we love your content and we'd like to place ads on your site. Now, you could do this one of many ways. You could manually code this into your site where you can rotate their banners in. Or as you kind of move up that level of sophistication, software like Ad Manager, kind of your solution in a box, can really help you with managing both your advertisers as well as getting more value out of your inventory. So what does it mean to have an ad solution in a box? Well, a whole lot, as it turns out. Ad Manager can help you manage your campaigns from end to end. So from the time that an advertiser approaches approaches you to place ads on your site. You can bring them into the system. You can actually forecast inventory. So if an advertiser is going to release a new product out in summer, and what they'd like to see is, hey, we're looking to get all your impressions in June through August. Well, it turns out Ad Manager has an ability to forecast your inventory. So it can actually say, well, you'll get roughly 60 million page views at about that time. And you can actually lock that order down early on. It also gives you ability to manage a library of ad creative, so that if an advertiser is going to place an orders with you repeatedly, they don't have to come and give you that every time. You have a library. You can just attach those to different orders. It gives you the ability to manage different kinds of orders. So how do you bump up certain orders? How do you make sure that you're fulfilling your commitments to those advertisers? And then layer on the ability to do different kinds of targeting, and I'll spend a little bit more time on that in the next slide. Reporting and analytics, all of which in real time, so you're able to track how many impressions you've served up for different advertisers, and provide reports to them as well. Beyond that, when we talk about Ad Manager as being a solution in a box, there's a lot more that we could do. Any ad format. We talked about at the beginning of the talk about things like being able to do banner ads and rich media and Silverlight and text ads, and being able to manage things for search, and being able to manage ads within mobile devices and RSS feeds. Well, with Ad Manager, you get all of those things as a part of a single package. And the neat thing about the way Ad Manager has been built is that you can buy it as both a hosted solution, where we'll host the application for you and provide all of the infrastructure for you, or you could buy it as a licensed version, where you could host your own copy of this within your own data center. So depending on your level of sophistication, you have the options with this product. There's a number of interesting add-on modules available as well. Question?
Does it support geolocation?
The question is, does it support geolocation? This is a good segue into my next slide. The answer is yes. Actually, it supports a lot of interesting kinds of targeting. The one that I find particularly interesting is the build your own behavioral targeting. So let's say you run a site about maybe a book site. You have a book site and you have visitors that are coming in, and some of those are interested in books about technology, and others are interested in books about literature. What you're able to do is create your own set of custom rules. So you're able to talk to your customers and say, how can I create you a set of users that are more interesting? And what you can do is say, well, if it turns out if anybody's visited this section of my site more than X times, or more than 3 times, this person is likely to be interested in say, technology books, regardless of whether he is in the technology section or in some other part of the site. And so this is going to help you increase the number of valuable impressions you have. Because as it turns out, and we looked at this as part of KSP as well, some parts of your site are more valuable to advertisers, and some audiences are more valuable to your advertisers than others are. And so what you're able to do is take that valuable section of your audience and sell them in other parts of your site as well. A couple of other interesting modules that are interesting here is things like the publisher registration module. So it turns out that advertisers like to do targeting based on data that's collected from users. So they like to do things like, give me this age bracket. I want to target males between 18 and 25. Now, having that data available increases the value of that inventory tremendously. So what you can do with Ad Manager is use the publisher registration module, plug that in, and seamlessly have that data available to your delivery engine. Again, a couple of other key points that are important, especially if you're running kind of an enterprise system, is open APIs. So you likely already have an accounting system in place, you already have some kind of reporting system in place, and you might want to move data back and forth. And so there's a rich set of APIs available here where you can both control the system using APIs, so you have the managed APIs, as well as APIs to pull data out and import it into your system. The product's been out for a while now. I think it's on the 10th version. It's running on about 350 customers, and I think somewhere in the range of 55 billion impressions a month. So it can take the load. So the real benefits for something like an ad manager can be gained when you take those little pieces that we talked about, those different modules, put them together, and address those issues around your premium inventory and your discretionary inventory. As you folks probably know, the premium inventory is the ad space that you're going to sell directly. So you have a sales force, or you have a team that's selling these ads, and they're going out and selling this. It's a guarantee. So this goes back to, I want all the impressions I can get from your site from June through August. Done. Now that's the kind of inventory that you can sell at a premium. And then there's the other pieces of inventory which is kind of left over after you've done your guaranteed sales. So you've gone out, you've tapped your advertisers. Turns out there's nobody that wants to buy your inventory, or you have some left over in May. So Ad Manager lets you do two things. It's going to let you increase that premium inventory by changing the focus to audience. So those modules that we talked about earlier, like behavioral targeting, like the registration module, are going to help you actually drive more and more of your inventory into that premium bucket where you can sell that effectively. And then it's also going to offer you controls as part of the discretionary inventory where you can effectively make money of it by passing it off to other ad networks. Final piece around Ad Manager that I'd just like to talk about is that it plugs in really neatly to some of the other products that we run that are advertiser facing. So the Atlas Media Console is an example of, I think of it as a database. So it's a database of properties or websites that you could show your ads on. And by registering your website into that database, you're making it available to that large pool of advertisers. So advertisers looking for people interested in technology books, or people interested in books in general, or gadgets, are able to get into that database and actually discover you, and then from there actually drive into things like being a part of that RFP process. So if advertisers are looking for a particular kind of inventory, they can issue the RFPs, and you're able to be a part of that RFP process as well.
So how big the site has to be in order to plug into this? Do you expect medium business at least, or just local, like a guy has a website?
So a product. So the question was, how big does a site have to be to get benefits from a product like Ad Manager? That's a great question again. So what we've seen is that the sites that typically benefit from this are sites that are able to do some amount of their own sell job. So they have sufficient inventory to be attractive to advertisers. Advertisers are already approaching them. So somewhere in the realm of, say, about 50 million impressions a month and above is where publishers will expect to benefit from somebody like Ad Manager. And we actually have some folks from Ad Manager here that we can talk to as well after the session. All right. So that was the piece that I wanted to cover around the different aspects of control within Ad Manager. Now let's get on to something a little bit more exciting around games. So one of the things that comes up when we talk about publishers is, why do you, the question I get is, people ask, why do you think of websites as publishers? Are they really publishers? Well, it turns out that when we think of online advertising, we're not just thinking of websites. The transition from websites to software is becoming increasingly seamless. And Massive is a great example of how software developers of a different kind can also participate in the monetization process. So Massive is a division of Microsoft that allows game developers to insert ads into their games. Let me do a quick demo to help you folks see what some of their work looks like.
These guys are nothing.
how many of you noticed any advertisements in that video? Say a significant part of the audience. So we'll go through another demo at the end of the talk, but I did want to kind of show this up front to give you a flavor for how advertising within games is significantly different from the other kinds of advertising you see. Let's see if we can switch this back. One of the key differences that you're going to see about advertising within games is this is a completely different kind of experience. So customers are incredibly engaged with their activity. So you notice that while you're in the middle of driving and you're trying to get ahead of that other guy, the likelihood of you stopping to look at an ad is extremely low. So unlike media like television, where you can actually interrupt that experience and insert a 30 or a 15-second commercial in, or even online media where you're able to insert an ad at the top or bottom, and a user can actually stop reading to look at an ad, the gaming experience needs to be significantly more seamless. There's a number of other challenges with advertising in games that are kind of unique to the space. Things like expiring inventory. So it turns out that games, when they're launched, become incredibly popular. So when they're launched, you see a sudden spike in usage. And as people actually finish those games or are done with all the levels, or the next new game comes along, they actually drop out of gameplay. So what you see is a sudden spike in availability of advertising for those games, goes on for about 4 to 6 months, and then it tanks. So this is, again, very different from a typical website where you have ongoing traffic with seasonal variances, but not the kind of dramatic changes that you can expect to see in the gaming space. As you can imagine, having advertising inserted for games within both the PC as well as the Xbox has its own set of technical challenges as well. Different graphics cards, different graphics drivers, different audio cards, audio drivers, significantly different capabilities in terms of the hardware. And that's some of the things that Massive has had to work with as well. On the business side, there's another set of challenges with being able to bring advertisements to games that are relevant to that audience. There's nothing that could ruin the gaming experience like an ad that was placed in the wrong place that was actually interfering with the game that you were playing. So bringing the right set of advertisers to the right set of game publishers, being able to connect them and being able to make that happen within that 4 to 6 month period that the game is live brings its own set of business challenges. A couple of other interesting things that are unique to advertisements in games. So one of the interesting stories I've heard is that gamers will often use ads as signposts. So a gamer will, particularly in a multiplayer game or one gamer will call out to the other and say, "Meet me by the Coke sign," or "I'm under fire, I'm right next to that Coke sign." And guess what? If that other gamer out there is seeing a Pepsi sign, that's a problem. So that's another interesting challenge that Massive has had to deal with, where within multiplayer games, they need to ensure that all the gamers are having the same kind of experience. The other interesting challenge is, even within a game, because the ad experience is so transient, because these games are fast-moving, that there needs to be a consistency of an ad campaign to actually register what is known as an impression for that particular ad campaign. One of the things that I can talk about that Massive has done a great job of is it's been working with the different game publishers to standardize some of these activities. So one of the big unknowns for the advertising industry within gaming was, what does it mean to have an impression? It's easy to define an impression for television. It's your 15 to 30 second spot. It's easy to define it for a website, where you can say as long as that ad showed up on a page view, that's an impression. But there's nuances to defining even what an impression looks like for a gaming experience. So things like size of the screen, size of the ad. So particularly in racing games where you're going by these ads very quickly, the ad at a distance might appear to be very small, then get significantly larger as you approach it. But only at a certain point in that process does it actually become big enough to register as an impression. The other thing is that because you're going so fast, just flashing an ad in front of a gamer is usually not enough. So in the gaming world, what you look at is typically a 10-second cumulative impression for something to be counted. Sometimes it's bumped up to be 20. And so that's another thing that was up as a part of that demo, was there's actually a counter ticking up there that showed the amount of time that a user had been exposed to that particular ad. And when we look at another demo, you can see that as well. Other interesting things are things like angles. So if you're in the gaming experience and there's an ad on the wall over there, at what point does it count as a page view or as a view? Does it count when I'm almost parallel to it? Probably not. Does it count when I'm perpendicular to it? Absolutely. But then there's a set of rules that need to be defined in terms of at what angle does it count and what angle doesn't. So these are some of the challenges that the massive unit has had to deal with, and I think they've done a great job actually working through these. And you can expect to see some of these standards come out, some of the work come out as standards, so that as a developer or a designer, when you're developing media or creative to be put inside games, you don't have to worry about whether it matches a particular company standards or not. This will be something that they're working with the IAB or the Internet Advertising Bureau over. We'll go through a couple of other screens to show some of the unique challenges that we see dealing with online ads within games. Some of the things you can see is here's an example of a scene that's kind of dark and dirty. It's kind of dusty in there. Now, inserting an ad within this experience requires us to do things like providing something that fits in. So if you'll notice, if you look at that Coke ad, it actually blends in. It looks like it's got a little bit of dust on it. It looks like it blends in with the texture even of that truck that's parked over there. Sports are a particularly interesting example for in-game ads. Reason for that is that users actually tend to expect to see ads within sports. So if you're at a baseball game, you're expecting to see some scrolling ads behind first base or home plate. If you're at a soccer game, you expect to see the scrolling ads on the side. You see them at the World Cup, every major event. And so one of the interesting points of feedback, I don't know if you noticed as we changed this from change the ad on the back here. One of the interesting points of feedback is gamers actually feel that the ad scrolling makes the game more authentic. So it kind of looks more like real life when you have the ads in it. Here's another example within a sport, again within a sports setting. Now something you'll notice that's different about this ad is that it's actually a standard ad. This one doesn't have any custom texture applied to it. And this is part of that trade-off and the work that Massive is doing in bringing standardization to in-game advertising. So how do you create a standard ad and be able to put that on the side of any wall within a game without having to do a lot of custom work? All right, we're going to conclude the talk today with another demo set in Vegas. And this time, let's see if we can catch the pieces that look at the impression counts and the ads themselves. Finish this one off. when you take cover behind an ad, I think you learn to remember it. It certainly makes an impression on you.
So what about the existing games that are already out there?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What are the existing games? So many games are already out there, casual games.
So the
How can they be monetized?
Okay, so the question is how can existing games be monetized? So a couple of things. Let me talk to the work that Massive's already done. So with Massive, one of the things that we offer advertisers is the ability to come in and target not just individual games, but packages of games. So you're able to come in and target, say, I think the example back there was Rainbow Six, but you're also able to come in and say, give me all action-oriented, give me something within this genre. Or you're able to come in and say, give me all games in general. But clearly all of these games need to have the ad slot sort of built in before you can deliver ads in there. The casual gaming experience tends to be a little bit different. And so what Massive has done is focus its efforts predominantly on the PC and the Xbox. And so its API is actually publicly available as a part of your game development toolkit. If you decided to include this, you can go to xbox.com/dev, DEV, and you can actually download the SDK from there.
Any initial pilots on what kind of CPM rates, or I'm sure it's not a CPC rate, any effective CPM rates, or what kind of money is realizable through that kind of in-game advertising?
So the question was any insight into the initial CPM rates that folks are getting from in-game advertising. So I can't comment on the specifics, but relative to the average page, I would say that the CPM rates are significantly higher. There's another question there?
So I was wondering about the mobile advertising and the screen time acquisition. If you have any brief description what is how to go through that.
So the question was about mobile advertising and the screen tonic acquisition. We already enable mobile advertising through a number of platforms. So Screen Tonic is a part of that asset base. Ad Manager will allow you to do mobile targeting. We also allow you to do mobile targeting within display. And we're also looking at at opportunities around mobile and other ad serving like contextual and other products as well. So Screen Tonic is part of that asset base, but we're already doing a lot of that. Any more questions?
So I had a question on the ad manager itself. So do you have to pull up the pages with some beacons or whatever to get the inventory tracked? How do you said you inventory tracking in the novel?
So the question was, how do you integrate Ad Manager in, and how are you able to get inventory tracking or prediction? I think so. It's as part of the Ad Manager implementation. What you'll typically do is insert the ad calls onto those pages, and the Ad Manager system will look at that data and use that to do projections of inventory.
Any integration with the ASP.NET, the frameworks, and then where the guys are publishing the site publishing tools?
I couldn't hear the question.
Any integration with the site publishing tools with the ad manager?
So the question is any integration with the site management tools. We are actually looking at a number of options there. We don't have clear-cut drag and drop into Ad Manager today, but we are looking at different options in terms of that integration. It's a great question. All right. Well, thank you everyone, and hope you have a great evening and a good time at MIX.